Hey, what's up guys? My name is Josh and today we're going to be talking about the Philips FIDELIO X2HR. I have received so many emails about this headphone, people offering to send it in, and then when I reply to the email, people just ghost me. They don't send it in. Probably been at least over 10. I have no idea why. Recently I was kind of running out of actual headphones to review. I have a lot of review items here, but not a lot of actual headphones. So I just went to Amazon and bought this. So there's the disclaimer for this video is I just bought this with my own money. But just like everything, including headphones that other companies send to me, this is going to be my unbiased and true feelings. So there are a couple questions that I want to answer in the review of this headphone. One is going to be, how does it compare to other headphones in the kind of $150 price bracket that this operates in? And also there's a lot of people who already own SHP 9500s, which are also from Philips. And this is kind of about double the price. And I want to answer whether or not I think it's a valuable upgrade. But we'll kind of reference that throughout this review, especially when we're talking about treble. And we'll also talk more about that near the end of the video here. So to start this review off, we're going to go ahead and talk about the build quality and the comfort of it. I have about a medium-sized head. At least in terms of hat size, and this is pretty big. It's a pretty big headphone. It's not the most attractive thing in the world, but it's all right. It does have a decent amount of metal. A lot of people say it's all metal. It's not. These ear cups right here, this actual part is plastic. You can hear it. And then this ring around it, the grills, and these steel armbands are all metal. Now, just because that part is plastic, it doesn't feel cheap by any means. In fact, as far as plastic goes, it feels quite good. And as far as this headphone goes, it actually does feel quite solid as well. You do have a mesh suspension headband right here, and there is a lot of room for play, so this will probably fit just about everybody's head. I don't think anybody's gonna have a fit issue with this. The ear pads are actually great. They're memory foam. The one and only downside about them, although it's comfortable at first, is gonna be the microfiber cloth that they use. This type of cloth over time will pick up a lot of dead skin and hair and just like dust and things like that. And it's gonna show signs of wear quite early on. And that is something that you're gonna have to be aware of. All right, now as far as the pads go, they are actually technically removable, and they have a 4-pin system that they kind of stick on place. And I think that they could have been a little bit more friendly in terms of putting aftermarket pads on here without these little pins right here that are gonna obstruct and be kind of uncomfortable depending on what pads you put on there. So I wish they had played just a little bit more friendly with aftermarket pads, but at least over time, if these pads do go bad, you can get them replaced. The actual comfort of this device is going to vary person to person, but I did notice quite a bit of clamp pressure, and because this is memory foam and pretty thick memory foam at that, you're probably gonna have some issues with heat if you live in a hot environment or during the summer. So actual comfort, I'm probably gonna list about a 7 out of 10. It's good, but not great. Not anything mind-blowing, but I think for most people it's going to be comfortable enough to get by without too many complaints, especially given that it's a lighter weight headphone. Now, more about the build, there is a slightly angled 3.5 millimeter that comes out of the left side. It's slightly angled forward, and this makes it a perfect candidate for one of those plug-in microphones. I'll put a picture up on screen right here, and that plugging in makes this an excellent option for a gaming headphone. And that's about all I have to say for the build and comfort. I think looks are going to be personal, but I think these are a good looking pair of headphones. While they're on your desk, not so much on your head. Now, when it comes to what you need to actually drive this headphone, they're fairly efficient. They're about 30 ohms and they have a sensitivity level of about 100 decibels per milliwatt, which means that most phones will be able to power this well enough to get decent sound out of it. And almost all amplifiers are going to see a benefit in terms of drivability and sound quality. So an amplifier like usual is recommended, but not required for this particular headphone. All right, now let's talk about sound. This headphone is a fun headphone. Emphasis on the word fun. It's got somewhat of a V-shaped sound signature. I know there are a lot of V-shaped detractors. I think it's okay for certain types of music and just your personal preference on what you like in a headphone. A lot of people really do love that V-shaped sound signature. Although I don't consider it to be technically superior, I think for a lot of people, they're actually really going to just enjoy the sound that's coming out of this. So by V-shape, what I mean is that the treble is a little bit kind of forward, and the bass is also quite a bit forward. Now, this isn't like a bass monster. Like, it's not going to be giving you unreasonable amounts of bass, but it does have a lot of kick and a lot of grunt behind the bass response. And the bass response is definitely a strong performer for the sound coming out of this device. Now, because this is somewhat on the cheaper end of like 150 bucks, I'm not gonna get crazy technical in terms of the bass performance. I will say it is large in amount. It is somewhat bloated and can sometimes feel boxy, but if you really like bass, I think you're going to be pretty satisfied with the amount of bass that's coming out of here. So when it comes to mid-range on this headphone, that's the most disappointing aspect of this headphone. And the reason why is because of that V-shaped sound signature. So you've got kind of forward treble, forward bass, and that makes the mid-range or the vocal range kind of dip down a little bit. And when that mid-range is dipped down, it can sometimes leave vocalists feeling both far away, not really well separated from the music, and occasionally a little bit hollow. So if you listen to a lot of vocal music, this is not really going to be the headphone for you. I recommend waiting later into this video when I talk about a headphone that I do recommend for those circumstances. If you listen to a lot of acoustic music, I think you're probably going to be able to, it's going to be passable on this headphone. Rock music is going to be good on this headphone just because it's going to add a lot of low-end grunt to the music, and it's going to seem very powerful, but you're also going to get some of the crispy nature of the highs for like cymbals and some of the higher notes for electric guitar. It's going to perform fairly well on this headphone. Will be kind of enjoyable. So further than that, I don't really have any strong compliments for the vocal department of this headphone, so I'll just bypass that part and say it's not really the best for the price range. Treble response, and this is kind of where I want to bring into the discussion the SHP 9500. It's actually somewhat similar in terms of actual quantifiable detail from the SHP 9500s. Now the 9500 is a little bit brighter than this headphone is in the treble response, but the actual detail increase is not really there. And in certain circumstances, I actually think that the 9500, because it's a little bit more forward, might actually be better in the treble response than the X2 is. So the X2, while not a massively resolving headphone for $150, it is going to present enough detail to be, I guess, what I would consider to be passable in the treble response, while not being a titan of the $150 price range. Also further into that 9500 comparison, if you like vocals, the 9500s are going to do vocals better. And this is also true for imaging and soundstage. The imaging and soundstage, its soundstage is fairly wide. I would say wider than something like a 5.8X, but a little bit more narrow than something like a K7XX. So wide soundstage, but not the widest and not the narrowest. And this is also a good point of comparison for the SHP 9500s. Because the 9500s do not have the most amount of bass in the world, they do seem fairly wide. And I think that is a better gaming headphone than the Fidelio. Really, the only reason I could see to get the Fidelio over the 9500 is going to be the bass response. If you just love bass and you're okay with that V-shaped sound signature and you prioritize bass over sound staging or mid-range, then the Fidelio is the way to go. Also build quality, especially the pads, are better on the Fidelio. And there are some other reasons, like the 9500 has a bit of sibilance, and if you're really sensitive to treble, then that's not really going to be the best headphone for you. So for those looking at this as like an upgrade path, the Fidelio is a much different sounding headphone than the 9500s, and I don't really see it as a direct successor to the 9500s, more of a sidestep at double the cost. You just have to be looking for what the Fidelio offers. Now, something that is in the same price category as a Fidelio, but I do consider sort of a worthy successor to the 9500s, is the HD 5.8X. This is from Mastrop. Now, the reason why I consider it to be a successor to the 9500s is because it's got that kind of mid-forward sound signature. It's very kind of in your face, but it still has good soundstage, and the reason why it's good is more of the presentation of the vocalist or the center image compared to the soundstage. So it's not the widest out there soundstage, but the perspective point of view is really accurate. And that's really good to see. The highs are more resolving on this headphone than the 9500s, but they're also not as bright as on the 9500s. So those of you bothered by the brightness of the 95, this brings that down quite a bit. And I think this is an extraordinarily, not only technically superior headphone to the 9500s, but it's also, to me, more enjoyable. Now, the real reason why I brought this up is, one, provide a clearer upgrade path from the 9500s, but also to compare it against the Fidelio. This is a technically precise headphone, and this is a fun headphone. And just depending on who you are, I'm probably going to direct you to one or the other just based off of what you want. Again, if you like vocals, this is the way to go. If you like top-end resolution, this is the way to go. If you like bass response, Fidelios. If you're not going to be caring about kind of the quality or clarity of the bass and you just want something bassier, the X2s are going to be the superior option here. Now, build quality is also better on the X2 by quite a large margin compared to the almost entirely plastic body, except for the grills, of the HD58X. Now, an interesting concept that I don't think enough people talk about is going to be kind of headphone pairing. So this is an extraordinarily popular headphone. And I think a lot of people watching my channel already probably own this headphone and can vouch for how good it sounds. But it provides a specific sound signature. And so when you're pairing other headphones, it's best to not really have the same sound signature again and again and again, and to kind of differentiate the sound signatures. So you can have something with wide soundstage and narrow soundstage, or something that's bassy or something that's bright, or something that's mid-range focused and something that's not. And if you already have this, for the price, it's just about as good as it's going to get for what it's good at. But if you want something different, the X2 is a valuable option. But we're going to bring up one other headphone for comparison here in the same price range that I think this more directly competes with. And that's going to be the 4XX from Mastrop. So this headphone is also built really, really well in terms of the quality of material, a lot of metal use in here. I actually consider this headphone to be a little bit more comfortable off the bat, just for my head shape and size, but not everybody likes the comfort of this. And this does have smaller ear pads, and some people have complained that their ears don't fit in here. I've got relatively small ears though, so mine fit just fine, so that's not a point of contention for me. While these are very different in certain categories, like this is a planar driver, and this is a dynamic driver. This is relatively hard to drive, and this is relatively easy to drive. It's mainly kind of the slightly V-shaped sound signature. Now the Fidelio is a more extreme example, and the mids are a bit more sucked out, and the bass response is a little bit higher than on the 4XX. And the 4XX is a little bit more tame of a V-shaped sound signature, and might be where I direct certain people who kind of want something different from the 58X, but don't quite want the level of extreme V-shape that the Fidelio has. For that intended purpose, this is a great headphone. But if you're really someone who searches for the bass response, especially again for rock, like this is fantastic. Even classical rock, like, you know, old school Van Halen, things that don't really have this massive amount of bass for like a lot of the drum hits. Those recordings were kind of dry in there. This can kind of enhance that to a really enjoyable level. So this brings me into the conclusion of the Fidelio. While it's not a headphone that I think competes on a technical level to a lot of similar priced headphones, but if you're searching for what this headphone offers, which is not necessarily a bad thing, it just depends on the type of music you listen to and the sound signature that you prefer, this is a pretty decent option. It definitely has its limitations, but I kind of enjoy listening to this for very specific music and very specific purposes. And if you're buying it for those purposes and that type of music, I think it's a great purchase. All right, guys, that's gonna wrap it up. Links to everything that I talked about in the description down below. New videos coming out pretty much every weekday, so subscribe if you're not already. Turn that bell notification on. Leave a comment, leave a like. And until the next video, my name is Josh, signing off.